All right, so here with offensive coordinator Kevin McGiven. Want to start off things with a quarterback. It's obviously a position everyone wants to talk about. Yeah. And kind of when I was looking back at the quarterbacks, Utah State hasn't really, because Bryson Barnes, Bronco talked about him being the starting quarterback. Utah State hasn't really had a running quarterback consistently playing. Like they've had guys like Andrew Peasley, Levi Williams. They played a game or two, but they haven't had like week one starter. This is your running quarterback, and had that for a whole season, at least since you were around as offensive coordinator, because you coached Chucky, Kent, DeAndre Burrell. So Utah State had a run of them, and they didn't have one, and now Bryson Barnes. So I guess what's it like having a running quarterback in general with the quarterback?
Yeah, to me, it's always nice to have a quarterback that's athletic. Sometimes I view that as a bonus in terms of what we've done traditionally in the past offensively. But where it's tough for defenses to get +1 in the box because the quarterback is giving you that added dimension or that added number. Someone that can extend plays, someone that can make things happen when things break down. It's always a lot nicer as a play caller, and takes a little bit of pressure off you when a quarterback can do that. And so Bryson has the ability to do those things. Some of those guys that you spoke of in the past have the ability to do those things as well. Yeah. And so, I wouldn't necessarily classify him only as a runner, because I think he's definitely got arm talent and a really good decision maker, and kind of gives you the whole package as a quarterback.
Yeah. So I want to talk about him as a passer, but one question is, you've gone over some of the things running quarterbacks do. Is there anything that is kind of underrated? Because most people think of running quarterbacks as they run sometimes on pass plays when they need to, or you run the read options sometime. Are there other things, and maybe you just answer this question, but are there other things that are kind of underrated as far as what a quarterback with athleticism can do for a team?
I think there's a couple different things. I think there's kind of a feel and instinct to it. Those guys that are athletes, I think guys tend to lean on that sometimes as a crutch, and sometimes, maybe you're playing outside of the offense a little bit when that's the case. And, but those guys that, are able to tuck it and run and do it at the right times, because of, and it becomes more instinctive or more of a feel thing after they've gone through a progression or whatever it is, and it's a little bit more in a timely manner. And when the look really presents itself, I think that's, one of those things that add to a running quarterback's ability. And then I think their ability to kind of keep themselves out of harm's way, because, how to take hits, when to run out of bounds, when to slide, doing those types of things that, in terms of protecting themselves, and still being an effective runner. I don't know if we'll be able to talk Bryson into sliding or going out of bounds, but he's a tough kid, and he likes to work for those extra yards and so on.
So some quarterbacks seem to not know how to slide. Is it just a matter of having quarterbacks that have played baseball?
I don't know. Yeah, some of them look pretty awkward doing it. Something that probably need to talk to Coach Johns about instilling into his practice.
Yeah. So you touched on Bryson Barnes as a thrower, and people have kind of branded Bryson a bit of runner because his passing numbers they're not bad, but they're not super spectacular. But what does he bring as a thrower? Because he's not helpless back there. He's had some good games throwing, even at Utah State. What do you see from him, his ability to sling the ball around?
Yeah, the biggest thing, he can make every throw effectively that we have in our offense. And he can distribute the way that we want it to distribute. A lot of that comes with his decision making as a passer, his ability to read defense, his ability to diagnose and collect information and do those types of things. And so, I kind of equate those things to, being a good passer. Definitely has the arm talent to do it. I think he has the level of accuracy, repetitive accuracy, and consistency as a thrower. At times maybe, hasn't been asked to do that as much, or hasn't, that part of his game hasn't been leaned on as much, where he definitely has the capabilities to do those things with both his physical arm talent and what he can do with his, his ability to read and diagnose defense and distribute the ball effectively.
So pretty much every year you get fans asking, are they going to use the tight ends more? And you got Brock, you got Josh, two guys that are like 4th, 5th, 6th year tight ends. What do you expect to see from them in terms of production, at least in terms of passing? That's what everyone looks at. Tight ends are like half the time they're blocking. But what do you see from them as pass catchers?
I think both of them have significant ability to be playmakers in our offense, and that's what I would expect. every year kind of looks a little bit different in terms of personnel usage and what you feel like your strengths or weaknesses are, based on your personnel and what your team looks like. But, a lot of the teams I've had in the past, where we felt like having 2 tight ends on the field or using the tight end significantly in our offense was definitely a benefit for us. And I would see that the same way. Those are, without a lot of experience coming back, those are 2 guys that have experience in this league, and to me, and have shown that they can be proven commodities. And so we're going to ask them, we're going to put a pretty heavy workload on those guys and ask them to do a lot of things in our offense, and would expect those guys to be playmakers for us.
Does there opportunity kind of increase where you have an athletic quarterback? You're going to have a lot of sets where the quarterback will run. Does their role kind of increase because you might have them both in as blockers, but then suddenly in the quarterback could either run or hand it off? And then
I think those are one of those positions that kind of can make your offense go. But it's we look for guys, and one of the I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but definitely a benefit of having tight ends that have versatility, both as blockers and as and as receiving tight ends, their ability to be in line, their ability to flex out. And so there those to move around, so we're going to put those guys in some different spots, but there's going to be things required of them in the run game, things required of them in the pass game. And so those, having them be multidimensional, and but I think Bryson's definitely going to benefit from that as well.
Shifting kind of back to the running game, but to the running backs, Javen Jacobs, Miles Davis seem to be the 2 names. I don't know if you want to reveal your depth chart, but those seem to be 2 guys potentially at the top of that depth chart. Them, I guess, along with Bryson, how do you expect them to potentially be maybe your running trio as far as producing rushing yards?
Yeah, same thing with those guys. Kind of like the tight end room. It's a really good problem to have in terms of when you have good skill and good depth at different position groups, in terms of what you can present, what you can do as an offense, and different sets and different personnel groups that you can get into. And we're always going to base it off what we feel like our strengths are, and who gives us the best chance, and then putting the right guys in the right situations. But those are definitely 2 guys that we're going to have roles in our offense. Miles has done a great job since he's gotten here, transferring from BYU, and Javen the same thing, coming in from New Mexico, where maybe a little bit different stylistically, in terms of those 2 guys, where Miles is a little bit more one cut downhill, and Javen has some real flexibility to his game where we can use him in some different ways, I think. So.
And Javen, one thing, when he had 17 receptions, but he only had 40 carries, but he had almost half as many receptions, pretty high ratio there. You see him as like potentially a receiving back. There's some backs that are like you catch a screen pass every now and again and run with it. And then there's your receiving backs who are running routes, maybe even splitting wide. Do you see him as more of that latter where it's like he's a true receiving back?
Yeah, I think that's really one of the things that we kind of look for. And we're going to take different types of backs, and have different guys in that room that bring different things to the table. But that's kind of a requirement that we look at in recruiting with all of our backs, is that they are proficient pass catchers out of the backfield. Now, how much they can do that from a slot position, or as a true wideout in that type of role, they don't always carry that skill set with them. I think Javen does have the ability to do that kind of stuff. And how much or how little, still yet to be seen in terms of some of the cross training that's required of a lot of the backs in that room. But we ask a pretty significant amount of all of those guys. So even though they do have some different skill sets, but that's kind of a prerequisite for all the backs in that room is that they're that they're natural pass catchers out of the backfield.
So speaking of pass catchers, then we talked about the tight ends, the running backs. Obviously, the wide receivers, that's their one job. All that and some run blocking, obviously. But kind of the stat that I was looking at is I think the whole wide receiver room has like less than 50 career receptions. I think Kahanu, is the only receiver who's caught a pass in an Aggie uniform, if I did that right. Like, this is a lot of guys who are new and or inexperienced to this team. But what do you see from those guys? Because some of them are experienced.
Yeah, there's not too much experience that comes with the room, but as far as what I've been around in this league, I think the group is very talented, and the things that they bring to the table that are going to enable us to have a lot of success in the throw game, and just comparatively with what I've seen in the league, with what I've coached in the league, things like that. But those guys definitely bring the skill set for us to be able to capitalize on those types of things. Now, some of that true game experience and not just seeing them in practice, those are the things that, making those plays in game situations on a consistent basis are yet to be seen. One of the things that we need to find out, as we get going here. But the talent level, I think, is there for us to be explosive in that regard.
Okay. We got time for a couple more questions, but the offensive line, I got to ask about that as well. The big hogs up front. Well, I think lost all 5 starters, but you have, I think, 3 guys, George, Tavo, and Trey, I think, that have some experience playing. What do you see from this O-line overall?
Yeah, probably since I've been here, offensively anyway, one of the most improved groups. From the start of when we got here in the winter until just even seeing their testing numbers going through the summer and some of their strength games. I didn't know if that would be a strength of our offense in spring ball, but where it's developed into a group that I feel like we can lean on, a group that I feel like is going to gel pretty quickly. Started to see that in spring ball, and I think once you get to a point where you're not mixing and matching as much, and you get a unit kind of playing together, and they start to log a lot of snaps and get some games under their belt, with the communication and the level of trust required at that position, that their development, their progress is going to continue to accelerate, where we can lean on them more and more. And I think Coach Acatelli has done a tremendous job with that group and fostering that as well.
Who have you got that you're trying to work in at center? Who are some of the guys? Because I've got some of the other positions, but it's hard to tell who you guys are planning on having at center.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So I don't know. Probably have to ask Mario. Yeah, we've got a couple guys that we're working. Tavasa is one that we're going to try to work in there, and then may have to move Elia McGow over, and work some at center as well.
Because I know you had a center for like 3 years now. You got to find a new one.
Yeah, obviously we've got Jimmy coming in from Purdue that will work at center, and then behind that, we've got to work a couple guys in. We've got a couple of young guys that have come in that'll be working that as well. Yeah.
And then just final question. Obviously, fans are going to get a chance to see the team a whole lot for week 1, but what is just the thing you want the fans to know, even if they're not going to see this team on the field until then? What do you want them to know about the team?
I think, first and foremost that it's a team that's going to, really be selling out. I think there's a high level of team unity. There's a high level of buy-in. Those guys working their tails off to put a good product on the field, and that I think they're going to be pleased with what they see, and some good results and an explosive team. So,
all right, thank you very much.